Chosen one, welcome, soul on assignment. You didn't stumble across this moment. You were led here. This isn't random. This isn't luck. This is alignment. Divine timing. Heaven's way of reminding you exactly who you are and what you carry. You've been walking through fire thinking no one noticed. You've been wrestling in silence thinking it didn't matter. But heaven saw it all. And now it's time to remember that your life is not just a journey. It's a declaration. You are not forgotten. You are not average. You are not lost in the crowd. You are marked. You are the one who rises when others fold. The one who glows after the storm. The one who walks into rooms and shifts the energy without saying a word. That's not just personality. That's purpose. That's legacy wrapped in flesh. So, if you've been wondering if you still matter, you do. If you've been questioning if what you've been through was worth it, it was. If you've been searching for confirmation, this is it. You are chosen, not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful. You're not here to fit in. You're here to stand out. And if you ever forget what you're capable of, let this space remind you. You are evidence that light still rises, that grace still restores, and that destiny cannot be denied. Let's go, looking for purpose and peace? Hit subscribe and start the journey. There's something undeniably sacred about the fact that you're still breathing, still believing, still building after everything that tried to dismantle you. Not everyone could have endured the weight you carried and still walked with vision in their eyes. Let's not downplay what you've made it through. These weren't just inconvenient moments. They were thresholds designed to break you open, leave you fractured, maybe even forget who you are. And yet, here you stand, whole enough to love again, strong enough to dream again. That's not willpower. That's divine preservation. The chapters you've lived through don't read like ease. They read like endurance. And endurance that doesn't make noise is still power. You held yourself together during seasons where everything around you was coming undone. You pushed through days where numbness replaced clarity and nights where even silence felt too loud. You didn't make it because everything worked in your favor. You made it because something unseen kept you grounded when life tried to uproot you. That presence was the anchor. That's what carried you. Not luck, not timing, purpose. Most people won't understand how you're still soft after all the betrayal. How your heart didn't harden after the neglect. How your mind still reaches for peace instead of chaos. But that's what makes you living evidence of something far greater than chance. You weren't kept alive to simply exist. You were preserved to reveal. There's something about you that speaks louder than words. It's in your posture, your resilience, your grace under pressure. And whether people say it out loud or not, they see it. They feel it. They wonder how someone who's walked through that much still shines like that. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. And that's the shift. That's what they can't shake. You didn't just outlast pain. You transcended it. The places that tried to undo you only sharpened your discernment, deepened your spirit, and prepared you for the path ahead. You didn't break. You became. Every delay, every detour, every invisible battle was groundwork. And now that the foundation has been laid in secret, what's next will be built in plain sight. You're not stepping into blessing by chance. You've been sculpted for it. So when people ask for proof that grace is real, they won't need a lecture. They'll only need to witness how you never disappeared, even when everything tried to make you fade. You are the answer they weren't ready for. You're not here by accident. You're here on assignment. But many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. Matthew 19 verse 30. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a seed buried deep beneath the soil, hidden from view, overlooked by those walking past. No one applauds that seed. No one celebrates its struggle under the weight of the dirt. But while everyone's eyes are fixed on the blossoms already blooming, that seed is doing something sacred. It's breaking open. It's being transformed in the dark. And when the time is right, not when the world expects it, but when heaven ordains it, it pushes through the surface. Not because it was loud, but because it was rooted. That seed, that's you, chosen one. Some people get handed the garden tools, the spotlight, the praise. They start with all the right conditions. They're planted in easy soil, surrounded by applause. But you were buried deeper. Your path didn't come with instructions. Your growth wasn't nurtured by admiration. It was watered with tears. But hear me. God does his best work in hidden places. That silence you endured wasn't punishment. It was preparation. That delay wasn't denial. It was divine timing at work. You see, when others were networking their way to visibility, you were being refined. When they were chasing influence, you were chasing obedience. They looked the part, but you became the part. And now they're watching you rise and scratching their heads because your elevation doesn't match their blueprint. You didn't follow the rules they wrote. You followed the whispers only your spirit could hear. Let's be real. It makes people uncomfortable because your story throws off their system. It bends their logic. While they were marketing, you were ministering. While they were performing, you were praying. And when the doors opened for you, they weren't just surprised, they were shaken because they saw someone who didn't play the game still take the throne. But here's the truth. Favor doesn't ask for permission. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of his sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor his kingdom. May his grace guide you always. See, the path you took, it wasn't built on credentials or applause. It was built on calling. And calling doesn't come from a platform. It comes from above. You didn't push your way into the room. God positioned you there. You weren't running to be seen. You were walking in alignment. And that's why your footsteps were guided into places even your prayers hadn't reached yet. That's not strategy. That's sovereignty. Let them wonder how you got here. Let them try to connect the dots. They won't find a formula because you are the exception to every rule they believe in. Your success doesn't stem from systems. It flows from surrender. Every breakthrough you've seen wasn't orchestrated by human hands. It was orchestrated in heaven's chambers, long before they even knew your name. You didn't climb with pride. You rose with purpose. You didn't have to manipulate. You just had to move when God said move. And because of that obedience, you now walk in favor that cannot be explained, only observed. You're not where you are today because of what you had. You're here because of who held you, because of who called you, because of who covered you through the drought, the doubt, and the delay. And make no mistake, it was a drought. There were seasons when it looked like nothing was growing. People turned their backs. Opportunities dried up. The phones stopped ringing. The rooms went quiet. But that's when heaven leaned in. That's when God started building the version of you that could carry weight, not just want. Because some people are gifted with opportunity. But you were entrusted with destiny. And now you walk into spaces prepared for others, and they don't know why your name sits at the table. But it's because God set it there. You walk with a kind of calm that unnerves the crowd, a kind of presence that can't be taught, a kind of grace that can't be bought. That's the mark of the anointed. That's what happens when someone lets the Spirit do the shaping. So don't apologize for where you're standing. Don't shrink back because they don't understand it. Don't downplay the weight of what you carry. You were never meant to fit into their box. You were called to rebuild the blueprint. You're not walking in their version of success. You're walking in a path heaven carved out just for you. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. They had schedules. You had seasons. They had followers. You had faith. And while they were busy curating platforms, God was cultivating a person. That person is you. A vessel shaped in stillness. A voice trained in the shadows. A light preserved for such a time as this. And here's the final truth. The fact that you're still here, still standing, still becoming, that's not just your victory. That's God's evidence. You are the result of grace on display. You are the reminder that what is birthed through surrender carries more power than anything built on performance. So walk like you're called. Let like you've been sent. And don't ever let anyone convince you your rise was accidental. People ask how you keep showing up in places you weren't supposed to be in. How doors open without visible keys. But their questions miss the point. It's not about credentials, it's about covering. You've been guided through the chaos, not by chance, but by instruction. And your willingness to move, without full visibility, is what drew the breakthrough in the first place. Now the ones who dismissed you wonder how you outlasted the very storms that were meant to erase you. But this is what happens when your steps are ordered. You didn't climb by force, you were lifted by intention. And no matter how confusing it looks from the outside, your rise is a statement, not of ambition, but of assignment. You didn't outshine anyone. You outlasted what was sent to stop you. So keep walking boldly, even if it doesn't add up to them. Keep showing up, even when the room questions your presence. You're not here because it made sense. You're here because heaven made space. And whether they understand it or not, your elevation is proof that divine strategy always outruns human structure. There's a depth within you that can't be traced to external circumstances. It doesn't shift with opinions or trend with the times. It's not loud, but it's unmistakable. What you carry is not ordinary calm. It's a sacred stillness, forged in the shadows, shaped in solitude, and sealed by something not of this world. It can't be bought. It can't be mimicked. And it certainly can't be shaken. While others grasp for stability in things that break, you become rooted in something that doesn't move. What you walk with is more than composure. It's the afterglow of survival. It's the proof that you've walked through internal earthquakes and came out with your soul intact. Your steadiness isn't an accident. It's the result of nights where your tears were louder than your thoughts, and yet you held on. It's what came from being broken without breaking. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of a sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. People notice it, even if they don't say it. They come near and feel lighter. They hear your voice and feel safer. Not because you preach peace, but because you are peace. That's what confuses them. How someone who has seen so much disruption can carry so much alignment. They expect bitterness, but receive warmth. They expect guardedness, but witness grace. You didn't find this balance in books. It was born in your deepest unraveling. You've stood in rooms where attention ran wild, but you remained unshaken. Not because nothing touched you, but because you no longer place your identity in the temporary. You've become untouchable not by isolation, but by trust. Your inner world has been restructured by presence, not performance. That's what makes your energy unfamiliar to many. They've only known peace that depends on comfort. You've discovered peace that thrives in the middle of uncertainty. When others question how you stay so grounded, they expect an explanation, a method. But what they're really sensing is not a system, it's a presence. You walk with something they can't put language to. What you carry doesn't come from control, but surrender. Not the kind that gives up, but the kind that gives over. And that surrender made space for something divine to move through you. So no, your quiet strength isn't small. It's spiritual. It's authority without arrogance. Light without spotlight. And that essence is your signature. It doesn't boast, but it lingers. It doesn't demand attention, but it shifts rooms. That's not charisma. That's evidence. You don't have to convince anyone you've found real peace. Just keep being still in a world that doesn't know how to stop spinning, and watch how it speaks for you. Let's be real. What you released could have wrecked you. What you endured could have turned your heart into stone. The betrayal, the silence, the manipulation you didn't deserve. It was enough to justify holding on, to justify staying guarded forever. But you chose the harder path. You chose release over revenge, not because it made sense, but because it made room. Room for healing. Room for peace. Room for transformation that could never bloom in the soil of bitterness. You didn't pretend the pain didn't exist. You just refused to let it build a throne in your spirit. You laid down what others would have carried for decades. Not because it felt easy, but because you understood something deeper. That holding on to what hurt you would only keep you chained to what tried to break you. And you weren't made to live tethered to damage. You were made to move forward. Forward in purpose. Forward in truth. Forward in freedom. The world tells you to close up shop after heartbreak, to shut the door and throw away the key. But you cracked the door back open. Not for them, but for yourself. You didn't need their apology to reclaim your peace. You didn't wait for them to name the harm before you dropped the weight. You let go, not because they earned forgiveness, but because you refused to carry their choices into your future. And that is divine strength. The kind of power that doesn't shout, but shifts atmospheres. The kind of power that confuses people who expect your softness to disappear after the storm. They don't understand how you can speak with warmth when you've walked through cold betrayal. But that's the mark of one who's been rebuilt by something greater than ego. You see, your forgiveness was never weakness. It was sacred wisdom. It was strategy from the spirit. It was you refusing to become what wounded you. Every time you chose compassion instead of retaliation, you broke a cycle. Every time you responded with clarity instead of chaos, you sowed legacy. You've become living proof that healing isn't just survival, it's revolution. So when they ask how you did it, you don't need to point to receipts. Just let your peace speak. Let your freedom speak. Let your wholeness echo what many thought impossible. Because what they're witnessing is not just a person who let go, it's a soul who rose. And the ones who heal like that, they don't just move on. They're elevated. And your elevation has only just begun. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. There's something extraordinary about you that logic can't measure. You've been walking through life with the kind of strength that baffles onlookers, not because everything was handed to you, but because you kept going when everything screamed stop. Your path was littered with lack, with detours, with closed doors that didn't budge. But you didn't wait for conditions to be perfect. You stepped anyway. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's what happens when belief becomes a lifestyle. People assumed your circumstances would dictate your outcome. They saw limitations and expected collapse. But what they didn't account for was the quiet determination rooted deep inside you. A knowing that rose up even when facts said impossible. You moved forward, not because the signs were clear, but because your spirit whispered, keep going. That kind of movement isn't taught. It's led. It's sparked by something greater. You navigated droughts with expectation. You believed in restoration while still surrounded by ruin. You trusted that breakthrough was near, even when it seemed nowhere in sight. And that trust, that invisible engine, pushed you through spaces that statistics said you'd never cross. Not because the odds changed, but because you refused to be ruled by them. You carried a promise that pulled you, even in the dark. What people see now, the progress, the presence, the peace, it didn't show up overnight. It was built in hidden places. Every leap you took wasn't backed by guarantees. It was backed by alignment. You bet on what was spoken to your heart before the evidence caught up to it. And that bet turned into proof. Not just for you, but for everyone watching. They try to piece together how you got here. They analyze, theorize, and come up short. Because what you carry isn't explainable by logic. It's the product of walking in trust long before the path made sense. You kept your focus, not because you had certainty, but because you had covenant. And now what once looked like chaos is forming into purpose. Your journey isn't random, it's marked. It's shaped by something beyond intellect. And those who thought you were unqualified now watch as doors swing open without their approval. Not because you push your way in, but because you followed the signal others couldn't see. That's the power of sacred direction. That's the force of real faith. So let them speculate. Let them search for formulas. They'll never quite solve the mystery that is your journey, because it wasn't built on formulas. It was forged in faith. And that kind of foundation doesn't just survive storms, it thrives through them. You're not here in spite of the facts. You're here because you refuse to let facts finish the story. You've done what few have the strength to do. You evolved, but never disappeared beneath the weight of it. You've walked through fire and didn't allow the flames to change your face. Life pulled at your edges, tried to distort your shape, twist your soul, and leave you as a shadow of who you were meant to be. But you didn't fold. You expanded. You adapted without surrendering your spirit. You changed, but you did not dissolve. Every test you endured came with an invitation to detach from yourself, to become guarded, to trade softness for suspicion. The wounds begged you to shut down, to respond with coldness, to mirror the harm. But instead, you chose depth. You chose honesty. You let every hard season polish you without dimming your clarity. You adjusted, yes, but not at the expense of your soul's original language. Where others gave into bitterness, you leaned into compassion. Where it would have made sense to build walls, you opened new doors within yourself. You mourned what hurt, but you didn't become it. You didn't swap authenticity for protection, nor humility for applause. You learned to carry wisdom without losing warmth. That kind of transformation isn't cosmetic, it's sacred. People often expect survivors to be unrecognizable, to come out on the other side colder, tougher, less open. But you confuse them. You've grown wiser without becoming unreachable. You've gained discernment without building distance. You didn't just bounce back. You blossomed in ways that honor who you've always been. And the world isn't used to seeing that kind of healing. It's not loud. It doesn't demand to be seen. But it changes everything it touches. The truth is, you could have easily let the darkness shape you. You could have masked your pain with ego, or sharpened your edges, so no one could get close again. But you didn't. You chose to be rebuilt, not replaced. And that choice is what marks you. You carry the rare kind of light that doesn't flicker when the wind rises. You reflect something holy, not just in what you say, but in how you still choose to love after everything that tried to steal your capacity for it. Your strength isn't in your resistance to change. It's in your refusal to let change erase you. You've grown roots, not armor. And now, the fruit of that process is showing. People see the glow, but they don't know how much was surrendered to preserve your essence. That's okay. You didn't do it for applause. You did it because you were called to carry integrity through fire. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. And because you stayed true, because you protected what was pure, heaven trusts you with more. You'll walk through new gates not because you're perfect, but because your transformation was honest. Your eyes carries reflection, not ego. You changed, yes, but only into more of who you were always meant to become. That is your evidence. That is your authority. Some people look for signs in the sky, wait for thunder to speak, or expect miracles to come with fireworks. But sometimes the clearest proof is the quiet presence of someone who simply refuses to give up. That's you. You're not just someone who made it. You're someone who embodies what redemption looks like when it walks on 2 feet. The evidence isn't in what you say. It's in how you show up, again and again, when life tried to erase your name from the story. You carry a stillness that disrupts chaos, a warmth that unsettles cold hearts. Not because you've had it easy, but because something sacred held you steady through the hardest chapters. You've been bruised by betrayal, stretched by loss, overlooked, underestimated, and still, somehow, you reflect grace like it's woven into your skin. That doesn't come from luck. That comes from connection, deep, unshakable connection to something divine. When people glance your way, they don't always realize what they're witnessing. They see the poise, but they don't know the process. They sense the light, but they haven't seen the nights you wept while holding on to nothing but a whisper of hope. You became a testament not through titles, but through transformation. The kind that only comes when you let the broken places become sacred ground. You didn't need to quote ancient texts to carry truth. You didn't need to shout to shift rooms. The way you walk, aware, grounded, unbothered by performance, that speaks louder than sermons. You've become a presence that lingers, a reflection of resilience people can't explain. When they get close, they feel something they can't name. That's not charisma. That's residue, left behind by every encounter you've had with healing. Every step you take now is layered with legacy. Not because you planned for it, but because you survived things meant to stop you. And now you lead, simply by being. You're the reminder that light doesn't always blind. It sometimes whispers. You're the kind of proof that doesn't need defending. When others ask if meaning still exists, if goodness still breathes, all they need to do is watch how you move with purpose after pain. You don't wear your journey like a costume. You wear it like a crown. Not to boast, but to testify. You're not here by chance. You're a soul-shaped message sent to a world that's forgotten how to believe. You are not just a survivor. You're a sign. You are not just a name. They'll forget many, but yours will echo. Because you weren't sent to blend in. You were placed to remind others that love still wins, that transformation is still real, and that light still rises after night tries to bury it. So keep being the living message you are. You don't need a platform to shift atmospheres. You are the shift. You don't need applause to prove your worth. You already carry the weight of truth. And whether they understand it or not, your life is a sacred answer in a world full of spiritual questions. You don't just carry the story. You are the story.